Hey everyone, I'm Matt, and today we're diving deep into a hidden gem of Christian fantasy literature. If you're a fan of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lord of the Rings, or Pilgrim's Progress, then buckle up, because you're about to discover a world where faith and fantasy collide in powerful, imaginative, and sometimes haunting ways. The Archives of Anthropos is a 6-book Christian fantasy series written by John White. It blends biblical themes and spiritual allegory with classic fantasy storytelling. Much like Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, the series follows children from our world who are transported into a magical land, in this case the realm of Anthropos. In the appendix to The Quest of the King, John White explains that he wrote The Tower of Geburah and the Iron Scepter first, but felt compelled to write the prequel volumes to explain parts of Anthropos' earlier history. In part, this was to answer questions such as, where did the Tower of Geburah come from? He writes, so if you wish to read them in the least confusing arrangement, follow the chronological sequence. So with that caveat in mind, today we will be exploring the first book, The Sword Bearer. First published in 1986. It's actually the third book released, and yet it is the first in chronological order. It deals with beginnings, describing the origins of Anthropos and the first crossings between our world and Anthropos. Our hero is John Wilson, a 13-year-old orphan from Pendleton in England, on his 13th birthday. His life gets turned upside down. His grandmother, his only guardian, dies unexpectedly. Alone, frightened, unsure of his future, John flees, pursued by the menacing figure of the local rag and bone man, Nicholas Slapfoot. In a twist of fate, he stumbles through a magical doorway into Anthropos, a world where human healing can be explored. It's important to remember that John White was a psychiatrist as well as a missionary, and that's important for what these books represent. Once in Anthropos, John discovers that he is not just any boy, he's the sword bearer, prophesied to wield the magical sword against the goblin prince, a figure of darkness tied to the mystery of abomination. He's guided by Mab, a mysterious seer, accompanied by Matman, that's dwarf royalty, and the unlikely companion, a talking vixen named Vixenia. Together they journey to the island of Geburah, confronting dangers like the Qadar, the Tower of Darkness, and the hidden horrors of Lake Nakash. Now the Goblin Prince, the ultimate antagonist, is none other than Nicholas Slapfoot, revealing the connection between the real world and Anthropos. Where John faces him, his sword hums and glows. It's a sign of divine guidance, cutting away the deception and confronting evil both outside and within. In this struggle, John's courage and faith are tested, showing that being chosen isn't about skill, but rather trust in the changer, in the God, the divine figure orchestrating all events. And John must face his fears, his childhood anxieties, which are manifest in the figure of Nicholas Slapfoot, or the Goblin Prince. And there's a twist. Mab, John's guide, is revealed in fact to be his father, Ian McNab, transformed and restored by the Changer. Their reunion is more than emotional, it's symbolic. And John not only discovers his father, but also finds a sense of identity, belonging, and divine purpose. And together they return to the real world in 1929 aboard a ship bound for Canada. So what makes this story more than just an adventure? Now there's many themes and allegory here. There's good versus evil, the Goblin Prince embodying those lies, chaos, and deception, while the Changer Michaya represents God's providence guiding John towards his destiny. There is that sense of prophecy. John's role as a sword bearer isn't just random, it's a calling, a reflection of divine orchestration that mirrors how believers are all invited into God's plans for the world. Through grief, fear, and courage, John learns that true identity is found not in bloodlines, although he does find his father, but in trust, in purpose, and alignment with God's plan and purpose. Anthropos is filled with dangers, both physical and spiritual, and victory requires more than a sharp sword. It's faith and yielding to a higher power. John faces fear and death, and Mab guides him, even risking himself, showing that selflessness is central to heroism and spiritual growth. There's many Christian symbols and motifs. The changer Mechaya is a stand-in for God, whose unseen hand does orchestrate events. The sword is the word of God, cutting through lies and revealing the truth. The Goblin Prince and Lord Lunacy are satanic deception, ultimately defeated by courage and divine alignment. The Garden Room is that space invoking Eden, heaven, protection and transition. The spiritual clarity. It's from here that the regents, the in-world version of Adam and Eve figures, emerge out of into the world. There's the Prostones and Marshall Stone, spiritual gifts, and the parables that reveal truth. They're prayers and signs of divine guidance and presence. Anthropos is as vivid as it is symbolic. Forests, glades, lakes named Nakash, the Tower of Darkness, the island of Gabora are more than just backdrops. They represent spiritual truths. Talking animals, the dwarf Matman, and magical artifacts populate the landscape where the line between real and the mystical blurs. Every step John takes is a spiritual journey, from fear to courage, from orphanhood to belonging. John Wilson grows from a frightened, orphaned boy to the sword bearer. He embodies the classic hero's journey and the believer's path of spiritual awakening. Ian McNabb, or Mab, is the weary guide who becomes the redeemed father, symbolizing grace, transformation, and reconciliation available through divine power. Nicholas Slapfoot, the Goblin Prince, is a shadow figure whose defeat represents triumph over sin and deception. Vixenia, King Bjorn, Queen Bjornslav are characters who turn from allegiance to darkness towards divine purpose, echoing the journey from sin to redemption. And there's many spiritual lessons in this book. Identity is found in God, and true identity comes through divine purpose, not through circumstances. Evil is both internal and external. The Goblin Prince mirrors John's inner fear. Confronting sin requires both courage and guidance. And salvation transforms. Mab's rejuvenation parallels that spiritual rebirth that all of us need. Prophecy and destiny are in God's hands. Trusting the changer is essential to fulfilling one's purpose. And the victory in Anthropos is a foreshadowing of that eternal kingdom beyond worldly struggle. From one perspective, John's journey is a classic individualization process. His orphan status reflects a rupture from his maternal archetype, and while Vixena and Mab guide him as wise figures, the sword represents the emerging consciousness and the integration of persona with those deeper forces. Confronting the Goblin Prince is as much about facing that inner shadow as it is about the external danger. And when he returns to the real world with magical artifacts, he carries wisdom of his spiritual journey into that conscious life, a metaphor for being spiritually mature. The Swordbearer is a story of courage, faith, and divine destiny. It's a tale where grief becomes a calling, fear becomes bravery, and a boy becomes a hero. Not by chance, but through guidance, trust, and alignment with the Changer, whose very name sums up his character. He is the one who brings about change. Thanks for joining me on this exploration. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Anthropos, hit the like and subscribe and tap the bell so that you won't miss the next adventure. Have you read The Swordbearer? Who's your favourite character? Or which part of Anthropos fascinates you the most? Drop a comment below so that we can dive in together. And remember, blue light is true light. See you in Anthropos.